I don't trust you, Mr. Reed.
Just don't confuse suspicion with proof.
What is that?
Making sure this stays with us.
You expect me to believe that?
I expect you to let me get you somewhere safe.
What is this?
Diagnostic records. We can argue about my character when you can walk out of here without my help.
Why keep helping me? There.
There. Part of the record is missing.
So we still do not know.
Not yet.
I don't trust you, Mr. Reed. Claire Whitmore said it without raising her voice, which somehow made the words land harder. Morning wind swept across the rooftop helipad of Whitmore Aeronautics, tugging at her coat while the helicopter waited behind them, its rotors beginning their slow turn beneath a pale Colorado sky. Marcus Reed stood 6 feet away in worn work boots and a navy field jacket, one hand wrapped around the strap of a faded backpack. At 30, he was broad-shouldered, powerfully built, and quiet in the particular way of a man who had learned that dignity rarely needed an audience. Claire was 26, a billionaire CEO whose name appeared on buildings, business magazines, and contracts Marcus would never see in a lifetime. This morning, however, she was staring at him as if his name belonged somewhere else. On an investigation report, Ethan Cole, her chief operating officer, stood beside her holding a tablet. His badge accessed the restricted server corridor at 11:42 Tuesday night. Ethan said. Marcus looked at the screen, then at Claire. I was repairing a cooling sensor 2 floors below. Your badge says otherwise, Claire replied. A badge says where a badge was. His voice remained calm, not necessarily who carried it. Claire's eyes narrowed. That sounds convenient. Marcus could have argued. He could have reminded her that he had worked 12-hour shifts for her company without a complaint, that he had a daughter waiting at home, that losing this contract would hurt more than Claire could imagine. Instead, he held her gaze. You don't have to trust me, ma'am. Just don't confuse suspicion with proof. Something shifted in her expression. Not trust. Not yet. Maybe surprised that a contractor had answered her without shrinking. Ethan checked his watch. We need to leave. Claire turned toward the helicopter. The mountain testing facility was nearly 90 miles away, and Marcus was the only field technician who understood the malfunction that had appeared alongside the data breach. She didn't want him aboard. She needed him aboard. That difference irritated her. Marcus followed at a respectful distance. Near the helicopter door, he stopped. The emergency survival pack beneath the rear seat was hanging loose, one buckle barely secured. Hold up. Claire glanced back. What now? Marcus crouched and tightened the strap. Emergency kit wasn't locked down. Maintenance inspected this aircraft 20 minutes ago. Then they missed one. He tested the buckle twice before standing. Claire watched him wipe grease from his fingers onto an old cloth. A billionaire waiting on a contractor because he refused to ignore a loose strap. Another inconvenience. Another small thing she assumed money had already paid someone to handle. They climbed aboard. The cabin forced them within arm's reach of each other, closer than either wanted. Marcus sat across from Claire, while Ethan remained behind to handle the corporate crisis. As the helicopter lifted above Denver, Claire opened her laptop and returned to the leaked files. Marcus looked instead through the window at the mountains ahead. His phone vibrated once before losing service. A message from his 8-year-old daughter, Nia, glowed on the screen. Don't miss my school show, Dad. Marcus smiled faintly and typed, wouldn't miss it for the world. Across from him, Claire noticed the smile, but not the message. She knew his employment record, his hourly rate, his security clearance. She knew almost nothing about the man. 23 minutes into the flight, the helicopter gave a sudden shudder. Marcus looked up. The pilot, Daniel Hayes, reached toward the instrument panel. A warning light blinked amber. Then another. Claire closed her laptop. What is that? Daniel didn't answer immediately. The aircraft trembled again, harder this time. Marcus instinctively reached for the emergency pack he had secured moments earlier. Claire saw his hand move and stiffened. What are you doing? making sure this stays with us. The helicopter dropped just enough to make her stomach tighten. Daniel's voice finally came through their headsets, controlled but urgent. We've got a systems problem. Everybody stay secured. Claire looked through the window. The city was gone. Below them stretched miles of dark forest and mountain ridges. She turned toward Marcus, and for the first time that morning, the balance between them felt strangely different. Her title could command a boardroom. His paycheck depended on her company. Yet thousands of feet above the ground, neither fact seemed particularly useful. The helicopter shuddered once more. Marcus tightened his harness, then checked hers without touching her. Pull that strap another inch. Claire hesitated. Why? His eyes moved toward the warning lights. Because right now, being right about me matters a lot less than getting home. The warning light changed from amber to red. Daniel Hayes leaned toward the instrument panel, his voice steady through the headset. We are losing hydraulic pressure. I am taking us down. Claire looked through the window. There was no runway below them, only pine forest rolling across the Colorado mountains for miles. How far are we from the facility? She asked. Too far, Daniel said. The helicopter dipped, then leveled briefly. Marcus tightened his harness. His eyes moved from the emergency pack to Claire. Keep your feet planted and your head back. She looked at him sharply. I heard the pilot. Marcus said nothing more. That irritated her almost as much as his calmness. 20 minutes earlier, she had been the person deciding whether he still had a job. Now he was studying the cabin with the quiet attention of someone preparing for whatever came next. The helicopter descended through a pocket of cloud. Trees appeared beneath them, frighteningly close. Daniel spoke again. Brace yourselves. I found a clearing. Claire gripped her harness. Marcus reached toward her, then stopped before touching her. Your right strap. She looked down. It had loosened slightly. She pulled it tight herself. Their eyes met for half a second. No gratitud. No argument. Just recognition. The landing came hard enough to throw everything against its restraints. The cabin tilted. Metal groaned. Then the world became strangely still. For several seconds, Claire heard nothing but her own breathing. Claire! Marcus was already unfastening his harness. It was the first time he had used her first name. Can you hear me? She blinked. Yes. Can you move your hands? She did. Good. Your legs. Her left leg moved. Her right did not, without a sharp protest from her knee. I cannot stand. Marcus glanced toward the front. Daniel was conscious but disoriented, separated from them by the twisted position of the cabin. We need to get outside, Marcus said. Claire caught his sleeve. The pilot. I'm coming back for him. You expect me to believe that? Marcus looked at her hand, gripping the jacket of the man she had accused less than an hour earlier. No, he said quietly. I expect you to let me get you somewhere safe. A faint smell of fuel reached them. Marcus pulled the emergency pack free. The buckle he had tightened on the rooftop had held. Claire noticed. He opened the side door, stepped onto uneven ground, then turned back. Put your arm around my shoulder. Her face tightened. I can manage. She tried. Her knee gave way before she reached the door. Marcus caught her carefully, keeping his movements controlled. For one strange second, the billionaire who commanded thousands of employees had no choice but to depend on a contractor whose weekly paycheck could disappear with her signature. Marcus lifted her and carried her away from the aircraft. He set her beneath a stand of pines nearly 200 feet from the clearing, placed the emergency pack beside her, and handed her a radio. Stay here. Marcus! He stopped. You said you were going back. I am. Claire stared at him. Why? He looked toward the helicopter. Because Daniel is still in there. Then he walked back. Claire watched the broad figure disappear through the trees, and something uncomfortable moved beneath her certainty. A man trying to harm her company had just carried her to safety, left her with the only emergency supplies they had, and returned for someone else. Minutes passed. Too many. Then Marcus emerged again, supporting Daniel with one arm. The pilot could walk but slowly. Marcus brought him beneath the trees and lowered him beside Claire. Daniel caught his breath. Emergency transmitter is damaged, he said. My satellite unit is gone. Claire reached for her phone. No service. Marcus checked his. Nothing. Daniel looked toward the mountains. Search crews will know our flight path. Marcus studied the smoke drifting sideways above the clearing. Maybe, but the wind is pushing that away from us. Claire heard the caution in his voice. Not panic. Something worse. Uncertainty. She looked at her injured knee, then at the endless forest. Marcus opened the survival pack and found water, thermal blankets, a first aid kit, and an old topographic map. He unfolded it across the ground. Claire watched his finger trace a thin service road several miles east. If nobody reaches us before the temperature drops, we move toward this. Claire stared at the distance. I cannot walk several miles. Marcus folded the map carefully. He did not look at her when he answered. Then I guess you are not walking. By late afternoon, the mountain had begun stealing the warmth from the air. Daniel sat against a pine tree with the emergency blanket around his shoulders, studying the damaged radio as though patience might make it work. Marcus stood over the topographic map, tracing the thin service road with one finger. 5 miles, maybe 6, he said. Claire stared at him. You expect us to walk 6 miles through this? Marcus glanced at her swollen knee. Not us. She understood immediately. Absolutely not. Daniel looked between them. Marcus is right. I should stay near the wreckage. Search crews will follow the flight plan, and somebody needs to be here if they pass overhead. Claire shook her head. We stay together. It sounded like an order. Marcus folded the map. Night temperature could fall below 30 degrees. We have one damaged radio, limited water, and no guarantee anyone saw where we came down. And your solution is carrying me through a mountain forest? My solution is reaching a road. Claire gave a humorless laugh. You always this comfortable ignoring your employer? Marcus slipped the map into the emergency pack. Only when my employer cannot walk. Daniel almost smiled. Claire did not. The old hierarchy was still alive, even here, beneath trees that did not know her name. She had spent years entering rooms where people stood when she arrived. Marcus did not seem impressed by any of that. Somehow that made him harder to understand. Daniel handed Marcus a compass. Follow east until you hit the creek. The service road should run beyond it. Marcus nodded. If rescue comes, tell them where we went. Claire tried standing again. Pain forced her back against the tree. Marcus waited without comment. That silence irritated her more than pity would have. Do not say it. Was not planning to. You were thinking it. I was thinking we are losing daylight. He crouched several feet in front of her and turned his back. Get on. Claire stared at him. I'm not climbing onto your back. Then we can sit here and debate organizational structure until dark. Daniel looked down, hiding another smile. Claire's jaw tightened. You work for my company. Marcus glanced over his shoulder. Right now, I work for getting 3 people home. The words landed differently than she expected. No challenge. No resentment. Just fact. She looked toward Daniel, then toward the distant ridgeline. Finally, she placed her arms carefully around Marcus's shoulders. He rose slowly, testing his balance before taking the first step. Claire hated the helplessness of it. She hated needing someone she had spent the morning investigating. Most of all, she hated that Marcus never used her dependence to make a point. He simply walked. Pine needles softened their footsteps. The wreckage disappeared behind the trees. After half a mile, Claire noticed Marcus occasionally bending a branch or stacking 3 stones beside the trail. What are you doing? Leaving markers. For us to find our way back? For rescuers to find us. Claire looked at the back of his head. You really believe they will? I believe in making it easier if they do. Another half-mile passed. His breathing grew heavier, but his pace remained measured. Claire noticed an old patch sewn into his backpack. Nia had written the word Dad beneath a crooked yellow star. Your daughter made that? Marcus glanced toward the strap. When she was 6. How old is she now? 8. And you left her to come on this trip? His steps slowed for half a second. I came to work. Claire heard the boundary in his voice. She also heard something else. Responsibility. The same reason he had apparently tolerated being questioned, watched, and treated like a possible thief. Ahead, the ground descended toward the sound of running water. Marcus stopped, and carefully lowered Claire onto a fallen log. Sweat darkened the collar of his jacket despite the cold. She saw him rotate his left shoulder and briefly wince. "You are hurt. I am functional." "That was not what I said." Marcus opened the emergency pack and handed her water. Claire did not take it immediately. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at her. "Doing what?" "Helping me after the way I treated you." Marcus held the bottle between them. "Because leaving somebody behind does not become right just because they were wrong about you." Claire finally took the water. For the first time since the helicopter went down, she had no answer. The creek was wider than Marcus expected, nearly 20 feet across, cold mountain water sliding over dark stones with a steady sound that filled the silence between them. Claire sat on a fallen log while Marcus studied the bank. He tested several rocks with his boot, then looked upstream. There's a narrower crossing about 50 yards that way. Claire watched him roll his left shoulder again. This time he could not hide the strain. "Sit down." Marcus looked at her. "What?" "Your shoulder." "Sit down. We need to keep moving. And if you cannot carry me after another mile." He almost answered, then stopped. Claire recognized the expression. It was the same one executives wore when someone beneath them made an inconveniently reasonable point. Marcus sat on a flat stone. Claire opened the first aid kit and found an elastic wrap. "Take off the jacket." He hesitated. "I can handle it." Apparently, we both have difficulty accepting help. That earned the smallest change in his face. Almost a smile. He removed the jacket, and Claire carefully secured the wrap around his shoulder without unnecessary conversation. His work shirt was damp from carrying her. His hands were rough from years of labor. Nothing about him resembled the polished men who occupied her boardroom. Yet none of those men were here. Marcus looked toward the creek. "You do this often? Bandage contractors in forests?" "Listen when somebody tells you no." Claire tightened the wrap slightly. "Do not get comfortable." Marcus gave a quiet breath that might have been a laugh. For several seconds, the distance between billionaire and contractor felt strangely thin. Then Claire's phone vibrated. Both of them froze. One bar appeared, then vanished. A message had partially downloaded. "Ethan Cole." Claire opened it quickly. The words were brief. "Do not trust Reed. Security found more." Her posture changed before she could stop it. Marcus noticed. "Signal." For a second. "Anything useful?" Claire locked the phone. No, the lies sat between them. Marcus did not challenge it. He put his jacket back on and stood. Their restraint somehow made her feel worse. They moved upstream until the creek narrowed to roughly 8 feet. Marcus crossed first, then returned and positioned himself beside Claire. "I'm going to support your weight. Use the rocks, not the water. You make everything sound simple. Simple is not the same as easy." She put an arm around him. Halfway across, her injured knee weakened. Marcus caught her, planted his boots, and steadied them both. Claire gripped his jacket. For one breath. All she could hear was rushing water and Marcus saying, "I have you. I told you so. Not trust me." Just 4 quiet words. They reached the opposite bank. Marcus lowered her onto a dry patch of ground, then filled their bottle through the emergency filter. Claire looked at the filter, then at the pack. That kit would have been scattered across the cabin if you had not secured it. Marcus handed her the bottle. "Probably. You knew something might happen." "No, I saw a loose buckle." Claire frowned. "That is it. Sometimes that is enough." She drank and watched him mark their direction with 3 stones. Her phone remained heavy in her pocket. Ethan had worked beside her for 7 years. He had negotiated acquisitions, protected the company through lawsuits, and stood beside her when older board members treated 26 like a weakness. Marcus Reed had been in her life for less than a day. On paper, the choice of whom to believe should have been effortless. Yet paper had never carried her across a creek. They continued east. After another mile, Marcus's steps shortened. Claire felt it before he admitted anything. "Put me down. We are making good time." "Marcus." He stopped. She had never used his first name before. Slowly, he lowered her onto a moss-covered log. His phone lit when he checked the compass application. The lock screen showed a little girl with 2 missing front teeth hugging him around the neck. Claire looked away, but not before seeing the words beneath the photograph. "Nia Reed. My reason. Your daughter, she said softly. Marcus nodded. She is waiting for you. Yes. Claire looked toward the miles of forest ahead, then back at the man she had suspected before learning anything that mattered about him. Then stop pretending you are not tired. Marcus met her eyes. Something had changed in her voice. Not trust. Not yet. But for the first time, concern had entered the space where authority used to be. The light was fading faster now, turning the spaces between the pine trees blue and gray. Marcus checked the compass and looked toward a rocky rise ahead. We have maybe 40 minutes before it gets dark enough to slow us down. Claire remained on the log. Then we need shelter. Marcus glanced at her, mildly surprised. That was going to be my suggestion. I am capable of having useful ideas. Never said you were not. There was no sarcasm in his voice, which somehow made Claire more aware of how often she expected it. Marcus found a shallow rock overhang about a quarter-mile east, protected from the wind and dry enough for the night. Getting there took nearly 20 minutes. Claire tried using a branch as a walking stick, but after 50 yards her knee refused to cooperate. Marcus crouched without being asked. This time she did not argue. She climbed onto his back, and he carried her the remaining distance in silence. His breathing grew heavier with every incline. When they reached the shelter, he lowered her carefully and immediately began gathering dry branches. Claire watched him work with one arm favoring the other. You should rest. After we have warmth. That sounds like something you tell your daughter. Marcus paused. Usually she tells me. Claire smiled before she could stop herself. Nia seems practical. She is 8. She thinks cereal is dinner and glitter improves everything. Does it? According to her, absolutely. The answer was so ordinary that Claire felt something inside her loosen. No board meetings, no security reports, no people calculating what her approval was worth. Just a father talking about his child while arranging pine branches beneath a mountain overhang. Marcus managed a small fire using the emergency supplies. Then he handed Claire the thermal blanket and removed his jacket. Put this over your legs. She frowned. You are already cold. You cannot move enough to stay warm. And you can. I can gather more wood. Claire stared at the jacket. Marcus, I do not need charity. He looked at her for a moment. Neither do I. The words were gentle, but they found their mark. She remembered the rooftop, his employment file, the way Ethan had spoken about him as though a security log were a complete biography. Claire took the jacket. Thank you. Marcus nodded once and walked toward the edge of the trees. Her phone vibrated against her coat. One weak bar appeared. Ethan's unfinished message finally loaded completely. Do not trust Reed. Security found more. His access credentials were used twice. Call me before you say anything to him. Claire's brief warmth disappeared. She read it again, then a third time. When Marcus returned carrying branches, she locked the screen. He noticed immediately. Something wrong? No. He placed the wood beside the fire. You're not very good at that. At what? Saying no when the answer is yes. Claire's expression hardened. You know surprisingly little about me, for someone making judgments. Marcus sat several feet away. Fair enough. He did not press. That made the message worse. She watched his hands as he adjusted the fire. Those hands had secured the emergency pack, carried her away from the helicopter, steadied her across the creek, and marked a trail for rescuers. Yet his credentials had apparently appeared twice near compromised. Systems. 2 versions of Marcus Reed now existed in her mind, and she could not make them fit together. Why did you take this contract? She asked. Marcus looked into the flames. It pays better than my last one. That is all. Rent, groceries, school clothes. Life does not become mysterious just because somebody has less money. Claire lowered her eyes. I did not mean it that way. I know. That almost hurt more. Wind moved through the trees. Marcus noticed Claire shiver and pushed another piece of wood onto the fire. Try to sleep. What about you? I will stay awake a while. Because you think something is out there? Marcus shook his head. Because somebody should. Claire studied him across the small fire. She wanted to ask about the access logs. She wanted to place Ethan's message between them and demand an explanation. Instead, She watched Marcus pull his daughter's patched backpack closer and check the time on his phone. His face changed when he saw Nia's photograph. Just slightly. Enough. You were worried about missing her school show, Claire said. Marcus looked up. How did you know? I saw the message earlier. He was quiet for a moment. I told her I would be there. Claire looked toward the darkness beyond their shelter. You might still make it. Marcus gave a tired smile. That is the plan. For the first time in years, Claire Whitmore found herself hoping a man with no title, no influence, and every reason to resent her would keep a promise that had nothing to do with her. Morning arrived without warmth. A thin silver light slipped between the pines, revealing frost along the edges of the rocks and a fire reduced to glowing embers. Claire woke beneath the thermal blanket and found Marcus already standing near the tree line, studying the compass. He had given her his jacket during the night. Again, how long have you been awake? She asked. Long enough. That is not an answer. Marcus glanced back. About 2 hours. Claire sat up carefully. Her knee remained stiff, but the swelling had eased slightly. You should have woken me. You needed sleep. So did you. Marcus folded the map and returned it to the emergency pack. We have about 4 miles to the service road, if the map is accurate. Claire watched him lift the pack with his right hand instead of his injured left. And if it is not, then we improvise. She almost laughed. Billion-dollar decisions in her world required analysts, forecasts, attorneys, and presentations. Marcus Reed could face 4 miles of wilderness with one compass and the word improvise. They ate the last 2 energy bars, splitting each one evenly. Marcus tried giving Claire the larger half. She noticed and exchanged it before he could object. Equal portions. His eyebrow lifted. Executive order? Common sense. That is new. Claire looked at him. Marcus smiled faintly. The moment lasted only seconds, but it felt strangely normal. Then they started east. Claire managed nearly a quarter mile, using the branch as a walking stick before the ground steepened. Marcus crouched. No argument this time. She climbed onto his back. He rose slowly, breathing through the strain in his shoulder. Tell me if you need to stop, Claire said. I will. You said that yesterday. And eventually I stopped. After nearly collapsing. You have a dramatic definition of nearly. The trail narrowed along a muddy slope. Marcus slowed, placing each boot carefully. Claire could feel the tension through his shoulders. Put me down. Not here. Marcus. The earth shifted beneath his right boot. He caught a tree trunk with one hand and lowered Claire quickly onto stable ground. Loose dirt slid several feet downhill before settling. Claire reached for him as his injured shoulder struck the tree. His face tightened. Are you all right? Give me a second. For once, she did not order him to move. She simply stayed beside him. When his breathing steadied, Claire opened the first aid kit. Seed. Marcus looked at her. That sounded like an order. Consider it a request from someone who cannot reach the road without you. He sat. Claire loosened the wrap around his shoulder and secured it again. Her movements were careful, almost hesitant. Does Nia do this for you too? She usually puts cartoon bandages on injuries whether they need them or not. Effective. Emotionally. Claire smiled. Then she noticed a small embroidered patch inside his backpack. Best dad ever, stitched unevenly in yellow thread. She made that too? Birthday present. His voice softened. She saved allowance money for the fabric. Claire looked down at the expensive watch on her wrist, useless without a signal, then back at the crooked stitching. The contrast unsettled her. She had spent years measuring value in numbers. Here was something no balance sheet could price. Marcus, she said quietly, if you had to choose between reaching help alone and staying with me, what would you do? He met her eyes. That is not the choice we have. Pretend it is. Why? Because I want to know. Marcus considered her for a moment. I would stay, even after everything. Your opinion of me does not decide my principles. Claire looked away. Ethan's message returned to her mind. Security found more. The words suddenly felt less solid than they had the night before. Marcus stood and offered his hand. She accepted it. They continued until the forest opened onto another steep descent. Claire tried walking again, leaning against Marcus. Halfway down, her knee weakened. Marcus caught her before she fell, but his injured shoulder gave under the sudden weight. This time Claire reacted first. She planted her good foot, wrapped an arm around his back, and held him steady. For several seconds, neither moved. "I have you," she said. Marcus looked at her, the same words he had given her at the creek. Something passed between them without needing explanation. Then Marcus noticed a weathered wooden structure through the trees below. There, Claire followed his gaze. A small ranger shelter stood perhaps half a mile away. Marcus smiled tiredly. That might have a radio. Claire slipped his arm across her shoulders. "Then we get there together." He glanced at her injured knee. "You can barely walk, and your shoulder is failing." She took one careful step. "Looks like neither of us gets to be stubborn alone anymore." The ranger shelter looked closer than it was. Every careful step stretched the distance, and by the time Marcus and Claire reached the weathered porch, both were breathing hard. Marcus pushed the door open with his good shoulder. Inside were 2 wooden benches, an empty supply cabinet, an old battery lantern, and a radio mounted beside a faded Forest Service map. Claire saw it first. "Please tell me that works." Marcus crossed the room and turned the switch. Nothing. He checked the battery compartment, then followed the cable beneath the desk. Loose connection. Maybe corrosion. Claire lowered herself onto a bench. "Can you fix it?" Marcus looked at her. "You asking the contractor?" There was no bitterness in his voice, but Claire heard the history beneath the words. Yesterday, she had treated his position as evidence of how little authority he deserved. Now his hands are the most valuable thing in the room. "I'm asking Marcus," she said. He held her gaze for a moment, then crouched beside the radio. "I can try." Claire removed the emergency pack and began sorting what remained. 1 bottle of water, a few medical supplies, the compass, Marcus's backpack. When she moved it, a small black flash drive slipped from an inner pocket and landed near her boot. She froze. The Whitmore Aeronautics logo was printed across its side. Her breathing changed. Marcus did not notice. He was removing the radio panel with a small multi-tool. Ethan's message returned with brutal clarity. His access credentials were used twice. "Call me before you say anything to him." Claire picked up the drive. "Marcus." Something in her voice made him turn. His eyes dropped to the object in her hand. Silence filled the shelter. "What is this?" she asked. Marcus stood slowly. "Diagnostic records." "Company records?" "Yes." "Why are they in your personal bag?" "Because I copied them Tuesday night." Claire stared at him. "The night my data was stolen." "The night I found something wrong with your system." Her expression hardened. "You expect me to accept that?" "I expect you to hear the rest." "Security says your credentials were used twice near restricted servers." Marcus went still. "Security told you that?" Ethan did. A different kind of silence followed. Marcus looked toward the window, then back at her. "I was in the building Tuesday. I found irregular access. Traffic while repairing the cooling controls. I copied the diagnostic logs because entries were disappearing. Why did you not report it?" "I did." "To whom?" "Operations." Claire's jaw tightened. Ethan controlled operations, and nobody contacted me. That part is above my pay grade. The phrase could have sounded resentful. It did not. That made it worse. Claire held up the drive. "This could prove exactly what security suspects." "It could. That does not concern you." Marcus looked at her steadily. "You decided what kind of man I was before the helicopter left Denver. Me getting louder will not turn suspicion into evidence. Then defend yourself. I'm keeping you alive." His voice remained low. "We can argue about my character when you can walk out of here without my help." Claire flinched, not because he had raised his voice, but because he had not. He returned to the radio. No demand for the drive. No attempt to take it from her. No performance. Just the soft click of tools against metal. Claire looked at the flash drive again. Yesterday, her title had allowed her to judge him from across a rooftop. Today, forced into the same cold room, she could see what the report had missed. Exhaustion in his face, concern for his daughter, and a stubborn refusal to abandon people who doubted him. "Why keep helping me?" she asked. Marcus did not turn around. "Because what you think about me and what I choose to be are 2 different things." The radio suddenly crackled. Claire straightened. A broken voice pushed through the static, distant but unmistakably human. Marcus adjusted the dial. "This is Marcus Reed. We are survivors from a helicopter emergency landing. Can anyone hear me?" Static answered. Then 3 faint words emerged. "Repeat your location." Claire exhaled sharply. Marcus reached for the map. In doing so, his injured shoulder weakened, and he caught himself against the desk. Claire moved instinctively, supporting his arm. He looked at her hand. She did not let go. "Tell me what you need," she said. Marcus pointed to the map. "Find the ranger station number." Claire pulled it closer. Billionaire and contractor bent over the same faded paper while the radio hissed beside them. Outside, the mountain remained indifferent to status. Inside, Claire still held the evidence that could condemn Marcus. But for the first time, she was beginning to wonder whether the real danger had ever been the man standing beside her. The voice on the radio vanished almost as quickly as it had appeared. Marcus adjusted the dial, but only static returned. Claire leaned over the faded map, searching the tiny printed numbers along the edge. "Ranger Station 14, she said. "Elevation 8,200 feet. Marcus found the mark with his finger. "We are not there." Claire looked up. "What?" "This shelter is an old maintenance cabin. Station 14 is farther east." He measured the distance against the map scale. "About 3 miles. Claire stared at her knee. Marcus stared at his shoulder. Neither needed to say what both were thinking. The radio crackled again. "Survivors, repeat location." Marcus pressed the transmitter. "We are inside an abandoned Forest Service shelter west of Station 14. 2 injured. Pilot remained near the aircraft." Static swallowed half his words. Then the distant voice returned. "Search teams are working the western ridge. Weather limiting visibility. If able, reach Station 14. Emergency beacon located there." Claire closed her eyes briefly. 3 miles. Marcus thanked the dispatcher and released the transmitter. "We leave after 20 minutes. No, he looked at her. "Claire, you have carried me for miles with an injured shoulder. You barely caught yourself against that desk. And your knee is not ready for 3 miles. Then neither of us is ready." She pulled the bench closer to the radio. "So we become ready." Marcus almost argued, then sat. For several minutes, they shared water and silence. Claire noticed him checking his phone again. No signal. Nia's smiling face filled the lock screen. "What happens if you do not get home today?" she asked. Marcus looked at the photograph longer than usual. "Mrs. Alvarez downstairs has her. Nia is safe." "That was not what I asked." He rubbed a thumb across the edge of the phone. "Her school show is tonight. She has one line. She practiced it every morning for 3 weeks." "What line?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything." Claire went still. "That is her line. She says it louder than necessary. Maybe she wants people to hear it." Marcus looked at her then. Something in Claire's expression had softened. "Why did you stay with me?" she asked. "We already covered that." "No. You told me leaving someone behind would be wrong. I'm asking why that matters so much to you." Marcus leaned back against the wall. "Because Nia watches me." Claire waited. "Children listen sometimes," he continued, "but they watch all the time. If I tell her people deserve decency, then abandon someone because she judged me unfairly, what did I actually teach her?" The room became very quiet. Claire looked down at the expensive watch on her wrist. She had inherited Whitmore Aeronautics at 23 after her father died unexpectedly. Since then, every advisor had taught her to measure risk, protect leverage, question motives, and never let emotion interfere with judgment. Nobody had ever told her that character might be what a person did when there was nothing to gain. "I do not have children," she said. "I know. Of course you know. My life is probably in every background report your company made you sign." Marcus shook his head. "I know because people with children mention them, usually in the first 5 minutes." Claire almost smiled. "You make wealthy people sound predictable." "People are predictable. And what am I?" Marcus considered the question. "Tired." She blinked. "Not arrogant. Not privileged. Not suspicious. Tired." The word found a place no accusation could have reached. Claire looked away toward the window. "You should hate me." That sounds exhausting. She laughed once, unexpectedly, and the sound surprised both of them. Marcus stood and tested his shoulder. Claire pushed herself upright with the walking branch. I am walking as much as I can. I know, and when I cannot, we stop. We stop. You are not carrying me until you collapse. Marcus picked up the emergency pack. You always negotiate survival plans? Claire stepped beside him. I negotiate everything. At the door, she held out the black flash drive. Marcus looked at it. Keep it, he said. Why? Because if something happens to me, somebody needs to know what is on it. Claire stared at the small device resting in her palm. Yesterday, possession of it had made him look guilty. Now he was trusting her with the very thing that might clear his name. She closed her fingers around it. Outside, the trail climbed east beneath a cold white sky. Claire slipped Marcus's good arm across her shoulders. He steadied her at the waist only enough to help her balance. They took one step, then another. For the first time, neither was carrying the other. They were carrying the distance together. The first mile toward Station 14 took nearly an hour. Claire walked whenever the ground allowed it, leaning against Marcus while the branch in her other hand pressed into the frozen soil. When the trail became too steep, Marcus carried her again, but only for short stretches. Neither mentioned the arrangement. They had stopped negotiating pride. The mountain had simplified things. Step, rest, water, breathe, continue. Near the top of a ridge, Marcus stopped beside a weathered trail marker and looked back through the trees. Something is wrong. Claire followed his gaze. With what? The search pattern. Far across the valley, a helicopter moved slowly along the western ridge. Too far west. Marcus pulled out the map. Daniel filed our route before takeoff. Search crews should be following the eastern corridor by now. Claire watched the distant aircraft disappear behind the mountain. Maybe weather pushed them off course. Maybe. His voice said he did not believe it. They continued until Claire's phone suddenly chimed. 1 bar, then 2. She stopped so quickly Marcus almost lost balance. Signal. Several notifications appeared at once. Missed calls, board messages, news alerts, then a corporate emergency notice. Claire opened it. Her face tightened. What? Marcus asked. The company says the helicopter's last transmitted coordinates placed us 12 miles west of our actual route. Marcus stared at her. That does not happen by accident. Claire looked toward the vanished search helicopter. For the first time, the wilderness did not feel like their only problem. She pulled the black flash drive from her pocket. You said the diagnostic logs showed irregular access traffic. Yes. Can we read them? Marcus pointed toward a small utility box mounted beside the trail marker. Not with that. Station 14 might have a maintenance terminal. The signal vanished again. Claire slipped the phone away. Then we keep moving. Half a mile later, they reached an old service track. Marcus stopped and gave a tired laugh. Never thought I would be this happy to see gravel. Claire looked at the narrow road cutting through the forest. I have attended ribbon cuttings for roads that impress me less. Marcus smiled. She noticed how exhausted he looked. Sit down. We are close. That sentence has become your excuse for everything. This time he listened. They rested beside the road. Claire handed him the water first. He took one sip and returned it. You could drink more than that. So can you. Marcus. Equal portions. I believe that was an executive order. Claire shook her head but smiled. The old difference between them had not disappeared. She was still the billionaire whose decisions affected thousands of employees. He was still a contractor who worried about rent and school clothes. But out here, those facts no longer determined whose voice mattered. When we get back, Claire said, I can make sure you never have to worry about contract work again. Marcus looked at her. That is generous. It is deserved. You do not know that yet. Her smile faded. You are still worried about the investigation? I'm worried about why someone wanted you looking at me instead of them. Claire absorbed that quietly. He was right. Her suspicion had been useful to someone. Ahead, through the trees, a wooden tower appeared above the ridge. Station 14. They reached it 20 minutes later. Inside the small operations room sat an emergency radio, a battery-powered maintenance computer, and a satellite transmitter. Marcus connected the flash drive. Claire stood beside him, one hand gripping the table for support. Files populated the screen. Access records. Deleted entries. Routing changes. Marcus opened the flight telemetry. Claire leaned closer. There. Their helicopter coordinates had been manually altered 47 minutes before takeoff. The authorization came from an executive-level account. Claire's face went still. Can you identify whose? Marcus opened another log. The screen loaded slowly, then stopped. File incomplete. Part of the record is missing. Claire exhaled. So we still do not know. Not yet. Marcus pointed at another entry. But look at the timestamp. The false coordinates had been entered 3 minutes before Ethan sent Claire the security report accusing Marcus. Claire stared at the screen. Outside, wind moved softly against the tower. He knew, she whispered. Marcus did not answer. He did not need to. Claire had spent 2 days wondering whether the man beside her deserved her trust. Now a colder question took its place. What if the person who had taught her not to trust Marcus was the person she should have questioned first? Claire did not move for several seconds. Ethan Cole had been beside her through board revolts, lawsuits, hostile negotiations, and the first brutal year after her father died. When everyone else questioned whether a 23-year-old woman could run Whitmore Aeronautics, Ethan had stood at her right hand and told her not to blink. Now his warning about Marcus sat beside a timestamp that made no sense. Marcus closed the file and reached for the emergency radio. We need rescue first. Answers come after. Claire looked at him. How can you be this calm? I'm not calm. He adjusted the frequency. I'm prioritizing. The distinction stayed with her. Marcus transmitted their station number and coordinates. Static answered. Then a dispatcher confirmed their signal. A rescue team was approximately 2 hours away, delayed by low cloud cover. Daniel had already been located near the wreckage and was safe. Claire closed her eyes when she heard that. Marcus lowered his head briefly, relief softening his face. One less thing to worry about, he said. 2 hours, Claire murmured. We can manage 2 hours. Marcus tried to stand straight, but his shoulder resisted. Claire noticed. Seat. You are becoming very comfortable giving me orders again. This one is medically justified. He sat beside the maintenance desk. Claire lowered herself into the chair across from him. The forced closeness no longer felt like a trap. It felt like the first honest room she had occupied in years. No assistants, no lawyers, no polished conference table separating power from consequence. Just 2 tired people and a computer holding part of the truth. You said you reported the disappearing logs to operations, Claire said. Who specifically? I submitted a ticket through the internal system. Next morning it was closed as technician error. Did Ethan contact you? Marcus nodded. His office did. Told me not to investigate outside my assigned work. Claire looked toward the screen. And you kept investigating. I kept noticing things. That is a careful answer. Careful answers kept me employed. There was again the social distance she had almost forgotten. Claire could challenge executives and be called decisive. Marcus could challenge the wrong manager and lose the paycheck that bought Nia's groceries. Same company, different consequences. I did not understand that, she said. Marcus looked at her. Understand what? What it costs some people to tell the truth in a room where nobody needs them to have a voice. He was silent. Claire expected reassurance. He did not give it. Somehow, she respected him more for that. The radio crackled with an update. Weather was worsening along the western approach. Rescue might need to redirect to a fire lookout roughly 2.5 miles east, where the ridge offered safer visibility. Marcus studied the map. That is our best chance. Claire stared at him. You cannot carry me another 2.5 miles. Probably not. The admission frightened her more than confidence would have. Marcus opened a storage cabinet and found 2 trekking poles and a canvas strap. He examined them. But I might not have to. He fashioned the strap into support for Claire's injured leg, then handed her the poles. We go slowly. You walk what you can. I help when you cannot. Claire looked at his shoulder. And when you cannot. Marcus met her eyes. You help. They left the station beneath a sky turning white with cloud. The first quarter mile was slow. Claire leaned on the poles while Marcus stayed beside her. When she stumbled, he steadied her. When his shoulder tightened, she stopped without being asked. Their progress no longer looked like rescue. It looked like cooperation. At the crest of the next hill, Claire finally spoke. I trusted Ethan because he belonged in my world. Marcus kept walking, and you distrusted me because I did not. She swallowed. Yes, he could have made the moment cruel. Instead, he simply nodded. Claire looked at him. Why are you not angry? I am. Marcus adjusted the emergency pack. Respect does not require pretending something did not hurt. Claire stopped. That sentence landed deeper than forgiveness would have. Before she could answer, Marcus's phone caught a weak signal. A voicemail notification appeared from Nia. He pressed play. His daughter's bright voice filled the cold mountain air. Dad, I saved you a seat anyway. Mrs. Alvarez says you always find your way home. Marcus closed his eyes for 1 second. Claire watched him, then looked toward the ridge ahead. Come on, she said softly. We have a seat waiting for you. The fire lookout stood above the trees like a small promise against the gray sky. Claire could see it less than a mile away, but distance had become deceptive on the mountain. Her knee trembled with every step. Marcus walked beside her, carrying the emergency pack on his good shoulder, his other arm held close to his body. Neither complained. They had moved beyond complaints. Rest, Claire said when Marcus slowed. 30 seconds. 2 minutes. He looked at her. Negotiating again? Winning. They stopped beside a pine tree. Marcus checked his phone. No signal now. Nia's voicemail remained on the screen. Claire looked toward the lookout. She sounds like you. That should worry everybody. Claire smiled. Then the emergency radio clipped to Marcus's pack crackled. A dispatcher's voice broke through. Station 14 survivors. Rescue aircraft is approaching. The Eastern Ridge. Confirm movement toward lookout. Marcus answered immediately. Confirmed. Approximately 3/4 of a mile west. Copy. Visibility is limited. Reach the lookout if safely able. Marcus returned the radio to his pack. Claire studied him. Safely able. I heard it. That means no heroic nonsense. I was planning moderate nonsense. She laughed despite herself. The sound disappeared into the trees. They started again. The trail climbed sharply, forcing Claire to rely on both poles. Marcus stayed close enough to catch her, but no longer carried her unless necessary. Halfway up, his phone suddenly vibrated. One bar appeared. Then a corporate security alert downloaded. Claire reached for her own phone. Nothing. What did you get? Marcus handed his screen to her without hesitation. The message announced that investigators had identified unauthorized modifications to the helicopter's flight data before departure. Claire read further. Executive authorization had been used. Her stomach tightened. There is an attachment. Marcus opened it. A partial audit record appeared, recovered from a backup server after the original log had been deleted. Claire scanned the authorization code. She knew it immediately. EC 4417. Ethan Cole. For a moment, the mountain seemed completely silent. That is his credential, she whispered. Marcus said nothing. Claire scrolled. Ethan's account had altered the coordinates 47 minutes before takeoff. 3 minutes later, his office had generated the report directing suspicion toward Marcus. Another recovered entry showed that Marcus's credentials had been duplicated remotely. Claire lowered the phone. He framed you. Marcus looked toward the lookout. Looks that way. She stared at him. That is all you have to say? What would you like me to say? You were right. Marcus's expression remained tired, not triumphant. I did not need you to be wrong for me to be innocent. Claire looked away. The words carried no cruelty, which made them harder to escape. She remembered the rooftop, his work boots against polished concrete, Ethan holding the tablet, her own certainty. She had seen a billionaire executive and a contractor and decided which one deserved belief before either man had finished speaking. I owe you an apology. You owe yourself a better system. Marcus. He met her eyes. And yes, he said quietly, you owe me an apology. Claire nodded. I am sorry. No excuses followed. No explanation about pressure or betrayal. Just the words. Marcus accepted them with a small nod. Then he held out his arm. We still have a hill. Claire took it. They climbed together. Near the top, Her knee finally refused another step. Marcus crouched in front of her. Last stretch. Claire hesitated. Your shoulder. My legs still work. You really are impossible. Nia says stubborn. Claire climbed carefully onto his back. He stood, slower than before, and carried her the final 100 yards. This time Claire understood the weight differently. He was not proving strength. He was keeping a promise to another human being. At the lookout, Marcus lowered her onto the porch and activated the emergency beacon. A green light began blinking. Minutes later, the distant sound of rotor blades moved through the clouds. Claire looked toward the sky, then back at Marcus. When we get home, Ethan will have lawyers. The board will want this contained. Marcus sat beside her. Probably. And they will want to turn you into a story. Probably that too. What do you want? Marcus looked at Nia's photograph on his phone. My name cleared. Money. I earn my paycheck. A promotion. If I earn one. Claire studied him. That is it. Marcus looked toward the approaching aircraft. My daughter deserves to grow up knowing her father did not stay quiet because he was guilty. Claire felt those words settle somewhere deeper than corporate responsibility. The helicopter appeared through the clouds, small at first, then unmistakable. Claire had spent her life believing power meant deciding who mattered. Sitting beside Marcus Reed, waiting to be rescued because he had refused to leave her behind, she finally understood that dignity worked differently. It did not ask permission from power. It simply remained standing when power got the person wrong. The rescue helicopter circled the lookout once, before settling into the clearing below the ridge. Two paramedics climbed toward them, carrying medical bags and a folding stretcher. Claire expected relief to feel dramatic. Instead, it arrived quietly, in the simple realization that she would see another morning somewhere warm. One paramedic knelt beside her. Ms. Whitmore, we are taking you first. Claire looked toward Marcus. He was sitting against the railing, his injured shoulder supported by his other hand. No, the paramedic paused. Mom, he needs medical attention too. We have room. We are evaluating both of you. Then evaluate him. Marcus gave her a tired look. Claire, do not start. The paramedic glanced between them. Mr. Reed, can you walk? Marcus stood carefully. Yes. Claire shook her head. That answer has been misleading for 2 days. The paramedic smiled despite the cold. We will check him. Claire watched Marcus receive the same attention she did. It should not have felt significant. Somehow it did. Less than an hour later, they were flying toward Denver. This time Claire sat beside Marcus rather than across from him. No hierarchy in the seating. No suspicion in the silence. Just exhaustion. At the hospital, their worlds returned almost immediately. Claire's assistants filled the hallway. Corporate attorneys arrived. Security officers waited near the elevators. Marcus had one visitor. Nia, the 8-year-old, ran toward him the moment Mrs. Alvarez brought her through the doors. Marcus lowered himself carefully to one knee and opened his good arm. Nia stopped just before reaching him. Your shoulder, still attached. That is not funny. A little funny. She hugged him carefully. Claire watched from 20 feet away while 3 executives spoke around her about statements, liability, and market reaction. None of their words seemed as important as the little girl checking whether her father was all right. Then Nia noticed Claire. Are you the lady Dad helped? The hallway went strangely quiet. Claire looked at Marcus. He did not answer for her. Yes, Claire said. Nia considered that. He does that. Does what? Helps people. She said it as if explaining something obvious. Claire swallowed. I noticed. The next morning, Whitmore Aeronautics convened an emergency board meeting. Marcus was asked to attend remotely from home. Ethan Cole appeared with counsel and denied knowingly altering anything. The recovered audit logs disagreed. So did the duplicated credentials, the deleted maintenance ticket, and the false coordinates. Claire listened without interruption until Ethan finally said, we were protecting the company. No, you were protecting yourself, and you chose someone with less power because you thought nobody would question it. Ethan glanced toward Marcus on the conference screen. He is a contractor. Claire's expression changed. His employment status is not evidence of his worth. Silence followed. 2 days earlier, she might not have understood the full weight of that sentence. Now she did. The board suspended Ethan pending an independent investigation and referred the records to the appropriate authorities. Public relations immediately proposed another solution. Make Marcus the face of the rescue. Interviews. A bonus. A campaign about corporate courage. Marcus listened, then shook his head. No, one executive blinked. Mr. Reed, this could change your life. Maybe, but that is not what I asked for. Claire leaned forward. Tell them what you asked for. Marcus looked directly into the camera. Clear my name in writing. Correct every internal report that identified me as responsible. Restore the work record that was damaged. That is enough. We can offer substantially more, another board member said. Marcus remained still. My daughter knows my name. I want it clean when she is old enough to understand what happened. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Claire finally closed the folder in front of her. Then, that is what we do. The company issued the correction that afternoon. No heroic misaligi. No attempt to purchase gratitude. Just the truth. Later, Claire found Marcus outside the hospital entrance, waiting for Mrs. Alvarez to bring the car around. You could have asked for anything, she said. Marcus adjusted the sling around his shoulder. Anything is a lot to carry. You seem experienced at carrying difficult things. He looked at her, understanding the reference, then smiled. Some things are worth the wait. Nia came through the doors, holding 2 paper cups of hot chocolate. She handed one to Marcus, then noticed Claire standing alone. Without hesitation, the girl offered her own cup. You can have mine. Claire looked down at her. Then what will you drink? Nia shrugged. Dad always shares. Marcus said nothing. He did not need to. Claire accepted the cup with both hands. For years, people had offered her things because of what she could give them back. This was different. A child who owned almost nothing had simply noticed someone standing in the cold. Claire took a small sip. Thank you, Nia. The girl smiled. And for the first time since returning to the world of titles, lawyers, and polished floors, Claire felt that the most important lesson from the mountain had followed her home. 3 weeks later, the mountain existed mostly in quiet reminders. Marcus still moved his left shoulder carefully when he reached too high. Claire's knee required a brace for longer walks. Whitmore Aeronautics had completed its independent review. Marcus's record had been formally cleared, and the company had introduced new protections so contract employees could report concerns without passing through the managers they were reporting. Ethan Cole was gone from the executive floor, but Claire had refused to turn his betrayal into a public spectacle. The truth had been documented. The people harmed by it had been heard. That was enough. On Friday afternoon, Marcus sat on a wooden bench outside Nia's elementary school in Denver, holding the paper program from the performance he had missed. Nia had insisted on performing her one line again for him at home. She had stood on the living room rug, shoulders straight, and announced, "Kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything." Marcus had applauded like she had just finished a Broadway show. Now Nia raced across the playground with 2 classmates while Marcus watched from the bench, a black coffee cooling beside him. Is this seat taken? He recognized Claire's voice before he turned. She stood a few feet away without assistance, security staff, or a company car waiting at the curb. She wore a simple dark coat, and for once there was no phone in her hand. Depends, Marcus said. You here to renegotiate my contract? Claire smiled. Not today. He moved his coffee and gave her room. She sat. For a while, neither spoke. Children ran across the playground. A basketball bounced somewhere behind the school. A teacher called goodbye to a parent. Ordinary sounds. Claire seemed almost unfamiliar inside them. How is the shoulder? She asked. Better. That means nothing when you say it. Doctor says better. More convincing. Marcus looked at her knee brace. And you? Apparently, I'm a terrible patient. I'm shocked. Claire laughed softly. Nia noticed her from across the playground and ran over. Helicopter lady. Claire covered a smile. I was hoping we had moved beyond that. Nia considered this seriously. Miss Claire, much better. Nia held 2 bottles of water. She gave one to Marcus, then looked at Claire and extended the other. Claire hesitated. That one is yours. We can share. 3 weeks earlier, Claire might have refused out of politeness. Now she accepted it. Thank you. Nia nodded, as though the matter required no further discussion, then ran back toward her friends. Claire watched her go. She really does watch everything you do. Unfortunately. Fortunately. Marcus turned toward her. Claire looked down at the bottle in her hands. I came because there is something I never said properly. Marcus waited. She had learned that about him. He did not rescue people from silence. I judged you before I knew you, she said. I saw your job, your access level, the report Ethan handed me, and I decided those things told me who you were. Marcus said nothing. Then everything I normally depended on disappeared. My office, my authority, my phone, my people. I could not even walk without help. She looked at him, and the person I had already decided not to believe was the person who kept choosing not to leave me behind. Marcus lowered his eyes toward his coffee. You were scared. I was also wrong. The distinction mattered. He nodded. Yes. Claire. Breathe out slowly. Is that forgiveness? Marcus watched Nia chase a red ball across the playground. Forgiveness is not pretending something did not happen. Claire remembered his words on the mountain. Respect did not require pretending something did not hurt. Then what is it? Marcus thought for a moment. Maybe it is deciding the worst thing somebody did does not have to be the last thing you know about them. Claire looked at him. That sounds like a start. A faint smile reached his face. It is. There was no grand promise after that. No expensive gift. No announcement that two people from different worlds had suddenly become the same. They had not. Claire still returned to a glass tower where decisions moved millions of dollars. Marcus still went home to an apartment where Nia left crayons on the kitchen table and reminded him when rent was due because she liked marking dates on the calendar. Their worlds remained different. What had changed was the distance between them. Once, Claire had believed trust belonged to people with the right credentials, the right offices, the right names. Marcus had shown her something quieter. Character did not announce itself. Sometimes it tightened a loose buckle nobody else noticed. Sometimes it shared the last bottle of water. Sometimes it carried another person farther than strength should reasonably allow, then asked for nothing except the dignity of a clean name. Nia called for her father. Marcus stood. Claire rose beside him. They walked toward the playground at Nia's pace, not Claire's and not Marcus's. The mountain had forced two strangers to depend on each other. The truth had cleared Marcus's name. But neither of those things was the real ending. The real ending was smaller, a child sharing her water, a woman learning to look twice, and a father remaining exactly the man he had promised his daughter he would be. Kindness had not erased what happened between them. It had simply made something better possible. And sometimes faith in people does not return through grand gestures. Sometimes it returns quietly, one decent choice at a time.